We are live.
Possibly.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Darcinovia
No.
here, and we're going to be talking about what it's like to be disabled under capitalism, whether it's in being in the workforce or trying to survive this
Big
hellscape
word.
of a system from from which we live.
Yeah. Talking about the disabled struggle within, I mean, not just even within the workspace, but primarily within the way in which it organizes around the workspace and how the lower class disabled folk are scorn about within society.
Well, disabled issues are not really talked about very much. And I think it should be talked about more because, one of the most vulnerable, communities in capitalism is the disabled.
But come on, that John.
And it doesn't matter, if it's an intellectual disability or a physical disability. A lot of people who are disabled are treated with contempt in society. And most of what I'm be talking about in this stream is not going to be from other people's experience. I'm speaking from my own experience, stuff that I've experienced, being a disabled worker, dealing having to deal with, government bureaucrats just to be able to have decent dignity. It's like disabled people have to fight much harder than your average person to actually have basic human dignity because we're not really seen as human. Now, I can't say what it's probably a lot worse in other countries, but in America, the way the disabled are treated is disgusting. Like if you're not capable of learning at a reasonable rate, they'll just like abandon you. That happened to me when I was a child. When I first went to school, one of the first things that I remember was the teachers essentially, you know, not even bother, teaching me because I couldn't learn, the things that they were teaching me like the other students. So I was essentially put in a class with people that had far worse problems than I did. Like people don't understand what it's like to be disabled when you're a child. It is child abuse the way disabled people are treated, and it shapes disabled people as adults. Like
Yes.
if you want to know why people who are disabled have such low self-esteem, why they feel worthless, and why a lot of them have a lot of problems when it comes to drugs, or some of them are borderline suicidal. Look what society does to disabled people. You know,
Well, I
when
mean,
they're
I
a
grew up.
child, when they're a
I
child, they're taught to be that they're worthless. As an adult, that is reinforced by the kind of job opportunities they're offered. It's like the disabled are treated with such disdain. Now, I'll let Stone speak his experience.
I mean, let's say I grew up with an old man who was working class through and through, and he was in denial of it all. He didn't want to accept the issues I was dealing with and get them properly sorted and checked out. I mean, when the school got me forced over to actually have myself diagnosed for autism, when it couldn't get put through, that was thrown about aside. And my physical disabilities were always because the autism diagnosis failed because they couldn't read the woman who had diagnosed me's writing, and they had to re-diagnose me. So that my dad just didn't have me re-diagnosed, and then my physical disabilities were just ignored, and that I thought it was arthritis for years and years and years. Found out it was much worse. Um, you still end up getting battered up as useless, and it's a waste of space and everything that you're not able to push hard as everyone else. But when it's being denied to you that it is a disability like you think it is, you end up then trapped in this horrible, almost limbo of having to push and struggle harder to operate like a healthier human being, but also then getting beaten on harder for not being like that and being called useless and having the shit beaten out of you for not being able to get the shit done that you should be getting done because you can't keep up with it all. uh, Me and my dad used to clash left, right, and center, and it was the clashes that we had that actually ended up pushing my disability as far as it went because I have fibromyalgia, which is a stress and trauma induced disability.
And yeah, and majority of the disabled are lumpen, and the very fact that you have people thinking that the lumpen as a whole would side with the U.S. government in a revolution is so laughable. Yeah, a bunch of mentally disabled and physically disabled people are going to side with the government. Yeah, that's really laughable.
We're supposed to be the strong men, mind you, the first strong men of the imperialists. But you know, that's the
Yeah,
words. Those are the words of spineless aristocrats who want to project what they are onto the lumpen proletariat. And with the lumpen as well, I mean, most disabled people that are in a lumpenized, very awkward position. A lot of those disabled people, if not most of them, don't end up getting their disability pay. I mean, I don't get mine, but a lot of them don't even get their benefits either. They won't get the I'm even without my disability pay, I'm still lucky compared to some because some won't even get the limited time off work money that I'm getting. The what's it the It's not limited time off. I can't remember what it's called. It's like it used to be called employment support allowance, and that was easy. But it's essentially like you're injured, so here's a little bit more money than the normal job seekers' money, and that some people won't even be able to get that, so they have to like push into work and try and find a job while severely disabled, and that can be an absolute nightmare for these people. These people are either having to cover up the conditions that they have to get jobs and risk whatever injuries and damages and at jobs that they could have that could cost them money, cost people's lives, and get them in trouble for not declaring conditions that they have, or declare their conditions and never get a job
well, I know from my
or work
experience,
illegally.
my current job that I have, I would not be able to have gotten that job without help from a government program because you know, and I was told this by somebody, you know, on the spot, actually, that I did not get hired because I was the best person for the job or I, on my own merit. I was hired because I was a tax write off. That like that dug deep into to how much I wasn't valued by
Made you feel
society.
like shit.
It's like when I if when you think you got a job on your own merit because you generally did, because I did good in the interview. I said the right things. I I've made a good impression, and it's like I actually felt proud of myself that I actually got hired on this job, and only for that to be you know, basically shut down and say, no, I got hired because of a tax write off. You know, it's bad enough that disabled people have a low self esteem, but would that was that really necessary? I mean, wouldn't a white lie, for that instance, been effective? It would have been. If I'm not saying telling the truth is a bad thing, but in some instances, when people who are disabled, when if they actually believe they you know got a job, with their own hard work, don't you, don't you think maybe it's a good idea maybe just to let them think that because it's something positive.
Can't no, you're not allowed to let disabled people feel positive in themselves, Jordan. Come on now. I mean,
I
sorry.
know they're not. That's the point. Not to mention, if you are disabled, you get the shittiest hours. It's like I had to fight just to be able to work 2 days a week. No joke. There was one year where I worked only 1 day a week for most of the fucking year.
I
I'm
mean,
not.
they just sideline them, and they don't respect them. They don't switch them up. And as far as these people are concerned, they have to scorn the cigarette in your skin on this one. They have to do that because they feel that you're still a liability to them. That's how they feel about it. That's why they'll just give the like even if you could take more than two, they don't want to give you any more than 2 days fucking week of work. They don't want you anywhere near the work any longer than that. So they're just doing it so long as it does the tax write off. No more, no less.
Well, I can't work more than 2 days
Well,
because
yeah, because
of
social security will fuck you up.
yeah. Speaking of which, people like I've been criticized by fucking reactionaries about living on Social Security or mocked. It's like
What the fuck are you supposed to do? Just starve?
I'm like in a rock and a hard place, and it's like you either fucking you know accept the fucking money from Social Security to help pay your rent, or you fucking are homeless, and which puts me in an even more vulnerable position because if I lose my job, I can't pay my rent. If I lose my Social Security money, I can't pay my rent.
No, and for all those people that just say, "Oh, well, no, you just pull yourself through it." I've been homeless twice. Don't go homeless. It's not fun,
I
especially
don't
not in America. Fuck that.
I don't want to be homeless at all. But that's the thing. Another thing that about that's fucked up is a lot of the homeless are disabled. Like I've seen
Yes,
people who are on wheelchairs or who have walkers who are in canes. It's like in capitalist society, if you're not physically able to work or mentally able to work, you're not even worth people's time. And in order to actually you know keep your own dignity, especially if you're trying to use programs that help to keep you housed, like the people will threaten you just for raising your voice. Like you can't fucking actually defend yourself or actually be treated with human dignity, or actually when you assert your human dignity, like it's a constant struggle. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
there's
Like,
an there's an anecdote from Jimmy Dore that always hits me, and it's in California, every bridge you go by under that, or at least in the cities that haven't recently banned homeless people from existing, you will find homeless people living under all these bridges.
yeah,
Every single bridge.
it's like out of sight out of mind. It's like if you don't see a disabled person, they don't fucking exist. It's like for many years I was labeled as mentally retarded, no joke. I wasn't properly diagnosed until I was in my late 20s. Like I didn't even know I had autism until I was in my late 20s.
Yeah, it's a fucking. It hits you hard when you've had to go through all this shit, like trying to figure it all out. And what's it? It's then figuring out that you have a very analytical mind, and that all the time that you've been treated like you're just some fucking what's it? Like you're just some retard. You've actually been a very analytical and very intelligent person that's been left behind because of your fucking social disability. It's not even really a disability. It's capitalism that makes it what you were suffering with a disability. You could have
What's
been fucking as fucking Einstein-y as any other kid.
what's ironic is I actually surpassed a lot of the people that I fell behind in a few years, because no most people my age don't read like I do. So what is that? So if I'm mentally retarded, then why do I read so many books like I do?
Yeah, my man's gone from what's it, taking years of his life to get his head around reading to being an urban scholar of the fucking what's it high level where my man is reading through the books. My man has been devouring Gramsci. That's why his rhetoric has gone extra sharp.
Thank you, but being disabled is a constant battle. Like Social Security, I'm just gonna say this. I never like talking about Social Security because I don't like people knowing about my finances. But do you have any idea how much money you could have in your bank account? And it's nothing. $2,000. Like you can't have more than $2,000 in your bank account. And I argue you probably can't even have $2,000 because you're never going to have an exact amount of $2,000. So if you need to save money for an emergency, guess what? You're fucked because you can't save enough money for an emergency, because if you go over 2,000, you can lose your benefits. So you have to so you can only save possibly at no more than $600. And
My benefits is what 6 grand a year.
yeah, and my benefits like at Social Security is like 7 grand a year. It's like, yeah, $7,000 a year plus like
God.
7,000 from my job. Yeah. So yeah, I'm so well off. Yeah.
Oh wow,
Well,
you're only getting like what's it? Because let's go down is about 9,000 or 10,000 in British pounds, which would be so you're getting just under or just over double of what I'm getting.
what's funny is last year I made the most money out of any year in my life. That's only because of the COVID money. That from my unemployment, I made more money on unemployment than I ever did working.
Oh yeah, because there was the emergency payments of absolutely fuck all.
Yeah, it's like
We had a few of those.
I made more money at that year than any other year. I think I made like over like about 20 or $30,000. Still shit, but when you're fucking poor and disabled, like that's a lot of money.
When I was on the streets in the winter, it was the last time we had a proper winter where we had loads of snow. They did a one-time pay. They did a one-time emergency pay. It got so many people across the country pissed. The one-time emergency pay for people on benefits for the snow. They gave you 40 quid, and that was it. That was for the entire winter. It was like just towards the end of it, funnily enough, and it was like that entire winter of being absolutely blasted up by the snow. His 40 quid.
Wow, 40 quid. What would that translate to American dollars?
Oh my god, you're looking at like let's say anywhere between like city a centi buck.
That's nothing. That's fucking nothing.
Mind you, like the cold was destroying my joints, and I couldn't stay in one place because the way my autism made me all prangy, prangy, prangy. So I would just walk all over the place. So I was knackered the fuck out during that time. Like fucking hell, that destroyed me, and I was blasting the ecstasy a lot.
Well, one thing I will say this, I was fortunate. My family did not treat me like, worse because of my disability. That if there's one thing I could be blessed that, my grandparents, didn't, or more accurate to say my grandmother, my parents, my siblings, they did not treat me worse because of my disability. So if there's one thing I could be fortunate, but unfortunately, most people aren't like me. A lot more people actually have parents that are ashamed of their kids being disabled.
Yeah, like me.
It's like because they see them as a burden, or they're embarrassed to talk about their kids. It's like it's really sad and and disgusting. And not to mention, like when I was in a program, like God, I feel old. Like freaking ele- like 11 years ago, like I saw so many kids. It's like not kids. They were like in their late teens to early 20s. And I just couldn't believe that their parents would just drop them off in a place like that. But that's just how it is. Because, you know, like
They
all these,
just want them out of sight, out of mind, and to just be fixed. Fix them before you bring them back.
it's like, all they do train disabled people for in that program is to work. They don't fucking encourage them to do anything else but go to work. Yes. And not to mention, disabled people are the most exploited in the workforce. They really are because they're the least likely to fight for their rights because they have no other place to go. They're going to be put in the shittiest jobs. I mean, my own brother has been unemployed for over 10 years because the only kind of jobs they would give him are you know piecework, which piecework is basically doing you get paid for how much work you get done, or volunteer, or have half the work be you get paid and half it you volunteer. It's like they want to pay you as little as possible. Like the only reason I have my job currently is because of a government program, and that's the trap of being disabled. You have to depend on the government in order to actually get resources that you're not going to have access otherwise.
I mean, a really good thing that hits on this is the movie Joker, I think. Like, when that film really hits on the sort of havoc that disabled people go through throughout this sort of influence, like his support work ends up pulling away from him because of funding cuts, and he can no longer get any support work. But the person who was supporting him was not really getting anywhere anyway, because she was never really truly able to understand him until the last minute. And then everything pulled away. He had no back. He had no one to really ground him in anymore. His mom was completely fading away. He was losing that sense of himself. His workplace was full of people who just treated him like shit. Um, in which he's underpaid. He ends up being pushed into a position where his entire like life starts to melt and seethe around him, and it just breaks you down. Like, and he's at like the very end point of that position.
Well, that movie is problematic in ways where I actually do think it I actually makes it so disabled people are actually, dangerous and we should look out for them.
Nah, I see it as a conjunction of him being pushed to his absolute end. He was messed with.
Well, and that's the problem, though. I will say this: the way disabled people are portrayed in media, they either are portrayed as stupid and incompetent,
And
or
crazy.
they're portrayed as, criminals who do crime. And yeah, they may make them sympathetic in certain ways, but they still make them out to be the bad guy. I mean, look at Batman as the best example of, the dehumanization of the mentally ill,
Indeed.
which is
Indeed.
most of the disabled in general. Most of them are mentally ill. They don't have the resources to get the medication or get the help that they need because it's locked, behind, a paywall. And depending on what country you live in, the disabled are the first on the chopping block, when there's a crisis.
What's it within the first year of the coronavirus in Britain? 100,000 disabled people have been killed by the eugenic policies of the British government. Do not resuscitate orders, the forcing of people into elderly and disabled shelters.
They did the same in America with the elderly.
Yeah, they did the same with the disabled too.
It's one of the reasons why, I'm paranoid of getting COVID because I don't know what kind of policies that's enforced in America.
So I'm paranoid of dealing with the vaccine.
Even with the vaccine, I'm still paranoid.
I don't want to deal with the vaccine itself because the vaccine could have all sorts of complications that could put me in the same sort of situation in hospital where they would fucking, what's it, and then subject to a do not resuscitate order. Fuck that. I'll
Not to
just keep
mention,
staying clean.
not to mention, one of the first people to be murdered in the Hitler regime were the disabled. Like every fascist regime in history, the disabled are always the victims of eugenics and fucking genocide. Like you have supposed fucking Marxists
Maybe.
that advocate the fucking basically kill disabled people, which is fucking disgusting.
I mean, what's it? I've had enough disrespect amongst the Marxist community when it comes to disabled people. I mean, a lot of them don't even consider that struggle at all. It takes usually ends up coming from the African Anglo or the African American community when it comes to considering the disabled struggle at heart.
Well, of course, because there's disabled people in the African community as well. In fact, holy shit, I'm fortunate that I didn't suffer the worst of of the oppression that disabled people go through. If I were black, I don't know if I would be alive right now. Like getting stopped by the police is also something that I live in fear of because I have a huge problem with anxiety. I get really, really, nervous really, really quickly when I'm under
You just
stressful situations.
there's been a situation one time when my disability actually helped me. So me and my mate we were smoking at the bus stop and we were throwing this joint that we'd just finished smoking and consistently just kept flicking it against the bus stop because it wasn't going out when we were doing it. And the last time my mate flicked it, this police car just pulled up beside us. Like, what are you doing here, lads? And it was like we were like, oh shit, we had blood on us and everything. We didn't want to be getting fucked. And I just stood up, limped forward towards him so I could be more audibly closer to him. And I was just like, well, I'm severely disabled, mate. And I was just sitting down. My mate was walking me on my way up to my mum's. I was like, yeah, nah, yeah. And he drove off. I was like, fucking hell. I was
Well,
that covered.
I don't. It's just the cops. Like, considering how trigger happy cops are, it's like I don't handle stress well. I don't, and I see myself getting stopped by a cop. I don't know if I'll survive the encounter with them. That's and that's another reason I'm as anti-cop as I am because I don't know if I'll survive a confrontation with a cop. I don't know that because
Luckily, most of our cops can't shoot.
it's like you have to literally have a card on you if you're disabled. You have to show it to a cops so in order to get out of that such a situation. It's like that's the state that we live in a fucking America. That
But I'm
disabled
supposed
person,
I'm supposed to have a card, but I don't have a card.
the fact that you have to show a card so a cop doesn't shoot you. But then again, how are you going to do that when you're in a situation when a fucking cop has a fucking gun drawn on you? And
Excuse me, Mr. Officer, I have a cripple card.
yeah, the fuck. It's like cops like are so trigger happy in America. Like a lot of the people that get killed by the police in, are fucking the
You could just
disabled.
yeah, you could just be going to pull out your cripple card, and my man thinks you're gonna pull out like some sort of like Glock fucking 74 or whatever the fuck. I know gun names. I am just taking the piss to piss people off. But pulls out Glock 22 or something and just goes on the fucking flywall.
It's like I'm more afraid of a cop shooting me than some random, you know, guy on the street who trying to rob me. I'm more afraid of a cop. And that is not an irrational fear. The disabled fear the police, and for good reason, because most of the deaths in America are the disabled. I mean, look at the shootings of the police. There's shooting after shooting of disabled people available on social media. And if you're black, it's even worse if you're disabled. Like, it doesn't matter. Hell, they'll shoot someone even on a wheelchair who can't even get up.
Yeah, they have a bit of a joy for shooting at those that are at the fucking worst of their life.
I agree with Spec V on this one.
Trying us out to cops and fascists just to protect the social privilege. I mean, what's it? Half the time they are the fascists themselves.
Like, I had fucking B liberal tell me that I wasn't lumping. By the way, like people like that basically taking away my struggle, and not and refuse to acknowledge that the reality of my situation. And when the situation comes out that you're fucking, not only are you fucking are you lumping, but you're disabled lumping as well.
Do
It's
you know
like
how he's? Do you know
you're
how he's a
auto.
bit of a tit? Can we call him Double D liberal?
Sure.
To turn around and say you're not a lump and it's just fucking dirtily disrespectful. Like, what next? Jordan, I know
Well,
that both your parents are Irish, but you're not Irish.
I never actually thought of myself as lumping because I didn't even thought about it until I started talking to Net about it because I told him about my financial situation.
No, you're not lumpen, you're not Irish. I know that you're human and you're born on this planet, but you're not from this world and you're not human.
It's like
um, You
And
your feet aren't feet, they're hands.
well, one thing I've noticed though about the disabled, the disabled are the people that reject patriotism the most. One of the people that reject patriotism the most, because I don't see patriotism from the disabled when I talk to them. They're usually one of the loudest critics of America.
Yeah, I mean, not had the best of relationships with these governments and the bullshit. And I mean, a lot of the people who end up strong in the lump and end up getting more of a good relationship with those that are on the oppressed side of society. I mean, you end up trapped in this world where you know you don't feel in any relationship to the foundation of whiteness that pervades within society, but you're not what's it you're not on the other side of things. So you're in this like um you're a white man in a world where you weren't fucking ready for, and you got to get your head around sort of shit that you need to really understand, and you end up having a greater connection towards the struggles of African Anglos, African Americans, Jamaican people, etc., like that. Native Americans. I mean, if any of the best conversations I've ever had since I've been engaging with the wider world community has been from third world people, African American people, and Native Americans. That they've always brought this. They've always brought some of the most beautiful discussions to my hands. I think Comrade Number Three was one of the best ones I had because me and him just chatted for ages and ages and ages. Falcone couldn't even get a word in.
Well, one thing I've noticed about the disabled also, they're the most sympathetic to the struggles of the African and indigenous peoples. Like I do not see that from a lot of other groups. And I'm not just glorifying the disabled and saying that oh, we're better than everyone else. We're not by any stretch of the imagination. But there's a reason why you know the the black community when they're fighting for struggles, they will support the disabled, more than than the white community would. The white community,
They
if
have more
anything,
compassion.
the white community, if anything, has the most fucking contempt. Same thing with I Connor Gillis is gonna get me for saying this. Asian communities as well.
Whoa! He's done the. He's attacked the entirety of the Asia. I can't get us come out, come out. But no, America, yeah, America is in a very weird position where you know the African American and the Native American peoples have been in a massive struggle that has been deeply ignored. But one thing that I was supposed to mention in my last stream and I didn't also mention is there's a little nice little trick to Comrade Number Three's name. You don't want to be going to the toilet and being known as Comrade Number One or Comrade Number Two. It's Comrade Number Three.
But I had to say that because it's true. Because if you look at what Japanese culture and is, I'm going by Japan because I'm not familiar with other cultures. They have they hate the disabled in Japan. They treat them with such contempt.
I mean, what's it? It it really depends. Like there's different situations. Like there's the upper and the lower sections of society within the first world that come to these different angles and things because you've got different demographics. There's a lower class and an upper class Asian community to America, for example, and they are very drastically different.
Well,
When it
I'm
comes
going
to the
by the.
racist one, they would be good. They'd be good. They'd be the labor aristocratic community.
I'm mostly referring to the upper class ones, not the lower
Yeah,
class. Because the
of
lower
course.
class ones have far more compassion for the disabled than the ones in the upper class. In fact,
Mm.
upper class people in general don't have compassion for the disabled. What I've seen.
Yeah, well, yeah, the labor aristocracy just sees them as people that are not trying hard enough.
No, they just see the disabled as useless eaters.
Well, they have the belief that if you just try hard enough, you can achieve anything.
No, they believe that the disabled are useless eaters. I mean,
Well,
why
yeah,
were
they
they?
will believe that, but they would believe that they that because they're not trying hard enough. They have this like very eugenic mentality where they believe that people are just the way that they are because they're allowing labels to pull them down and they're not just thinking hard enough past their shit and pulling themselves forward.
It's so
I
easy
bet
to
it is.
just to say, oh, you're poor because you're not trying hard enough. Oh, you're poor because of this and that. When any of these people that ever say that to a disabled person don't know what it's like to actually live as being disabled. You have to
Well,
every day is a fucking struggle, and some is worse than others. Of course, there's disabled people that are in the upper class that you wouldn't know that they're disabled because, well, they have the resources to get the education that they need to actually help realize the potential they may have had, or reduce a lot of the problems that they suffer from. But most of the disabled are not fucking upper class. They're fucking poor.
I mean, what's it? Specky V actually asked me a good question on this, like something that comes from aristocrats, where they kind of basically come down and they they'll basically turn around to people who are disabled or lumpen and turn around and be like, well, why don't you just start up a business and shit like that? As if like you can just pull that shit out your fucking ass all of a sudden. I mean, I had someone try and tell me as if they had done it easy themselves when I was well aware that the only reason they'd had their own shop was because their fucking mother had fucking got it for them. And they're trying to tell me it's easy, you can just get it all sorted. It's your mother bought you your fucking shop and you're telling me you can just fucking pull it out your ass. Aristocrats.
Yeah. Like,
Bastards.
and did you know a lot of disabled people do not are not college graduates, high school graduates, because they don't give you a high school diploma depending on the state that you live in. In California, most of the disabled don't have high school diplomas because of the ridiculous requirements that they require for people to get a high school diploma.
Your
Like it
education system's different to ours. A high school diploma is a different level of degree to our high school GCSEs. Our GCSEs are a lower degree to them.
it's another way of keeping the undesirables in poverty, because if you don't have a high school diploma, you're not going to be able to get a job, because jobs are increasingly requiring high school diplomas. And it that if that excludes like the poor who have the most struggle when with learning, then the disabled especially are going to suffer even worse. The only reason I ever got my high school diploma because I had to fight for it and raise hell, with them.
Yeah, they want you to go through fucking sixth form and college, which would be about the same years you're doing your high school diploma.
What's really ridiculous is, you know, when you bring up like why don't these people have high school diploma? They're usually you say, what are they going to do with it?
Well, my response is your great 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 grand uncle.
I
Dig him up. Take him to Korea because they have a knack for bringing people back to life. And we'll do him with the diploma rolled up like a stick.
and it's really disgusting. There's a lot more disabled, workers than people even know. You can't just say someone's disabled because they are physically disabled. There's more to being disabled physically being disabled. Mental disability is majority of the disabilities that
Well,
disabled workers have.
my disability does all of it. Just anyone in their spare time look up fibromyalgia. Like, there's a lot to look up, and it's horrible.
It doesn't, the disability that I have, it was only made worse because of neglect, and that's what capitalism does. It's not profitable to actually help students that are struggling, with math or English or struggling to read. It's not profitable. It's more profitable just to put them in like special ed classes where, you know, let's just call them the retarded club, because that's essentially what they see them as.
That's what we get called a lot.
They'll just put them there so they're out of sight, out of mind. And not to mention, these classes get the worst funding. They cram a bunch of students in one class. So not only do they have the worst teachers, special ed students, they the materials that they're offered is usually out of date textbooks, or if you know what I've suffered through, teachers teaching you the same fucking thing you've learned a year before. Just to fill a quota. Like, oh, well, these people are stupid and they're not going to be able to learn, so let's just teach them the same thing because it's not going to matter. And God forbid, when you start questioning these fucking people, they treat you like you have an attitude.
Oh
Because,
yeah, nah, yeah, they did not like the way that I tear apart the bullshit and be like, well, this is bollocks.
like, when I had a teacher that gave a shit for the first time, and I went from that to having a teacher who doesn't give a shit, who treated me like I was an idiot, I wasn't having any of it. I probably got written up more that year than any year in school. It was ridiculous. I may have been a little shit back then, but when you're an angry fucking teenager who, and you have nothing to channel your anger, and when you see teachers that just don't care if you learn or not, it's like there's another reason why disabled people are as angry as they are, because all their lives they've had people telling them they're worthless, and the ones who stand up for themselves were considered troublemakers. We're considered hard to work with.
Yeah, I mean, what's it?
I'm
It
not
was
I'm not difficult to work with. Just treat me like I'm a human being, and I'm willing to actually talk to you. I'm willing to actually listen to what you have to say. Just that's I'm not that difficult to work with, as long as you're willing to listen to me.
ever seen as like someone who would likely get high grades, so they was tolerating me a lot. I mean, when I left the school, I ended up with the highest result record night in their fighting type. But the fucking what's it? Um, the the fact was is that I was just seen as also someone hard to work with. I'd be sent out of lessons a lot, excluded a lot, kicked out of school a lot. I mean, at one point I was kicked out for like 4 weeks before the 4 week holiday, so I had an 8 week holiday because there were loads of parents ringing in that were saying that they didn't want the kids going into school because they were afraid that the kids would not be able to go in school safely if I was on school property. So they sent me to the Peru. Went to Peru, did one lesson at the Peru. They're like, "You don't need to be here. Go on." Then I got an 8 week holiday.
That's
Happy
funny.
days. Uh,
And disabled people like myself, the days that I wasn't in school was fucking heaven, because I hated it that much.
I didn't like being at home, so I was in a rock and a hard place on that one.
Well, there was a point that I hated being at home, and I hated being at school. so I made the best of it.
Yeah. You
One of
didn't have
my
to go home to my old man.
like none of these institutions prepare the disabled for the harshness of you know the adult world, and that's why so many of them are so fucked up. Why so many of them do drugs. That's why so many of them you know end up going in and
Pass
out
now.
ends up going in and out of foster homes. Another thing, disabled are also one of the biggest victims of child molestation. Foster homes, group homes. It's like it is not fucking easy being disabled in a capitalist society. Like, especially
Indeed.
if you're a woman and you're
Oh,
disabled.
yes.
So there's so many of them that I've talked to, have have suffered some form of, you know, I don't even want. I'm not gonna get into detail, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yes, I know.
Like they're usually the victims of pedophilia. Not saying that the male disabled ones aren't, but but girls are overwhelmingly molested, and they take advantage of disabled you know girls because, well, who's gonna listen to these people? They're retarded. That's the mindset. Like the predatory nature of government institutions with the disabled is, especially if they're girls, is extremely you know
Disgusting.
it is.
It's inhumane.
My mother was disabled, and she was molested. No joke. She was molested, she was raped. It's like they take advantage of women because when your self-esteem is so low and you're disabled and you're a woman, they're gonna take advantage of you. And by
My
the way,
mom's
this
not
is
even
stuff.
disabled, and she had the advantage taken of her, and she was molested.
This is something that my mother told me. So I'm only speaking this because this is what my mom told me. And that's why my mom was as fucked up as she was. Yeah, sure, my siblings have handled their disabilities better than others, but it still doesn't change the fact that it is still a struggle to be disabled. And the stigma of having a disability or living on disability, has never gone away. Like when I was a child, being on welfare, my siblings were embarrassed because of it, because people looked at us like we were and give us dirty looks when we fucking used food stamps. Like the eugenic mindset that the average middle class American has towards people that are not as well off is sickening. And this is the kind of America that these American patriots want to save. Like, it says a lot about your society when you look at the most vulnerable people with nothing but contempt.
Well, what are they supposed to do? Look at us with respect? That's not in there. That's not in there. It's not in their humanist mentality to do so. They're looking for people who are of the peak and normal condition. You have to be a normal.
Whatever the fuck being normal means. When I hear being normal, it
Being
means
white.
when I think of being normal, I think of not being someone who has had to struggle all their lives, which I don't know where the fuck they have come from, but a lot more people have to struggle just to survive or to maintain their dignity. And I have to fight constantly, because people constantly, question my competence in these government programs, if I can manage my money, or look, because they want to see my finances, see what I spent. And I constantly tell them no, because to me, the only kind of independence that I have is, my is the fact that I get money and I get paid, and I don't want anybody knowing what I have, because to me that's the last, you know form of independence and the only form of independence that I possess. I don't have it anywhere else. Yeah, I may be able to buy some luxuries here and there, but that doesn't mean I'm independent. That doesn't mean, that I am better off than, everyone else. I may be better off than a lot of people in the third world, if not most of them. I may be better off than most of the people in my own country. But that doesn't change the fact that being, you know, poor and disabled on top of that isn't fucking, a blessing. It isn't fucking anything but hell. I'm on borrowed time, just like all disabled people are. I'm on borrowed time. When
60% of America is middle class, so you're not poorer than most. So you're not richer than most of America. You're poorer than most of it.
yes,
You
but
just
compare
there's a lot of it that's still poorer than you.
there's a lot of America that's poorer than me, and I acknowledge that fact. And to acknowledge that fact is a form of humility, which is something that a lot of people do not possess.
Well,
Some
it's
people,
like me and Jason were talking about it because like I'm at like I, I'm not at the lowest, but I'm in one of the lower end, the lower brackets of the situation because I'm just a bit higher than someone who would be job seeking. That's where I am at. So I'm second to lowest in pay that you could get from benefits in Britain in the first world. And we did a measure thing. We went under the economic calculator, and I'm still like 22% in the entire globe out of wage earners.
I do acknowledge that I'm better off than most of the planet, most of the billions of people.
I just
But
always thought that was a great metric to look at. I'd also like to add as well that we did the metric before, a year before then, and my money hadn't changed between that time, and I was 16% a year before. So in a year, I'd gotten the first world had gotten richer because I'd gotten um, what's it 6% poorer without changing money, and prices not really changing around me either. I mean, the tax did go up a bit and other stuff like that, and I guess there was a bit of a price rise in bits and pieces, but it was mainly because of the bourgeoisie getting richer and the aristocracy getting richer. If you look at any country during the last 4 or 5 years, the labor aristocracy has gotten bigger, not smaller. So all these people that are saying that the middle class is shrinking are full of shit.
not to mention, like, there's so many barriers for disabled people looking for housing. Like, in order for us to get housing, we have to depend on the government, like, and housing vouchers, which this is a trap.
Well, but
because
haven't you heard has the government's trustworthy?
because okay, think of the government as a drug dealer that you constantly are depending on them for, the
Wish the
stuff.
government was a drug dealer.
You're constantly, dealing with them with the stuff. You don't like them, you can't stand them, but you need them because you can't survive otherwise.
But I like drug dealers.
Or well, I think it's good. I think it's a good comparison, and the fact that I'm
They're a meth dealer. That's what they are.
I'm at the complete mercy of the U.S. government is something that I fucking hate. I, I but I can't just, like, I'm not gonna say fucking no to fucking money that's gonna help me fucking, put a roof over my head. Like, that'd be stupid. It's like do the lumpen look after their own self-interest? Of course we do. The lumpen, we're not stupid enough
Who
to,
does then? Who's
it's like,
just gonna turn around and go, "Whoa, my own needs? I better not do those."
and the fact that we're expected to put our fucking, to risk our lives like foot soldiers in the struggle against fucking, these white fucking Marxists, building America. It's like, fuck off. I'm not your shock troop. I'm not, like, if anything, I will fight for the people, you know, like the indigenous and the new African people and the lumpen before I would put my life on the line for a cause that's gonna do nothing but you know make my life probably around the same, if not worse.
If anything, what's it? Uh, Deimperialization and decolonization would up the lives of people in the lumpen.
I just see like I just see people like the Haas, the infrared cult and the Caleb cult and the U.S. government. I just see it as just two gang members at war with each other. I don't want to be on either one of their sides. I hate them both.
I mean, I don't call him infrared. I call him ultraviolet.
I just look at them as gang members or just different factions of the mob. It's like, why would I fucking want to, support either one of these groups? Both of them, seek my destruction. Why would I support, you know, you know, one over the other? At least the government is
Seek
at least
and destroy.
at least the government is honest about their fucking disdain for fucking working class people and fucking disabled people.
So Metallica doesn't content lock it for me saying that.
It's like
But
another thing about being disabled in America. It's like every few years, if you're a worker, Social Security like reevaluates, your benefits and I swear to God, I could swear that Social Security purposely either ignored the information they had in their system or purposely threw it away and put me on a wild goose chase where I have to fucking, you know, get all the information and fucking give it to them. Just to, all this, even though they could easily, with their resources, with their power, could easily get all the information they need. The whole purpose of these reevaluations isn't to fucking counter fraud. It's all about fucking power. It's a power trip. They hate the fucking people they talk to.
yeah,
They
indeed.
This is the kind of shit that I have to deal with every few years. People, being on disability is this fucking blessing? No, it's a fucking curse
Curse.
because
Yeah, exactly.
I have to fucking deal with the fucking government. Basically, constantly over railing over my neck, and I'm at their fucking mercy. When is being mercy at the government make me a fucking stooge of imperialism? I would support something that would go against my personal interests because I fucking care about the global struggle far more than my own interests. It's like if I was really, a shock troop of the American government, why would I fucking, talk about issues like the disabled struggle? I wouldn't even talk about it. I would act like it doesn't exist. I
Well, it
would
sounds like
fucking
you're serving the U.S. government.
I would sell out. That's what I would do if I were a shock troop of the U.S. government. But I'm not. I oppose the U.S. government, possibly more so than the likes of Caleb and Oz, because it isn't just my interests the government doesn't have in mind. It's the poor and the lumpen. And in my and I don't fucking view, 60% of the U.S. population as a viable, revolutionary, movement. There's no potential in the middle class. There may be some people here and there that may actually hate what this country is and may generally want to help, but I have to judge those peoples as individuals.
Yeah.
because the middle class, as a whole, every time there's any programs that help the poor and the disabled, they're the first and loudest ones to have a negative reaction. And in the news media, when you hear about anything that helps the poor or the disabled, guess what's constantly get brought up? It will increase taxes for the middle class.
Well, come
It's
on,
like
man. It'd be hard on the middle class if we help the disabled. We can't do that.
it's like I have nothing but contempt for this class because the worst people that I've ever dealt with working at my retail job who treated me like a doormat, who fucking lose their shit when they don't have a fucking product in the store that I work at. It's the fucking middle class. They're entitled. They act like they're fucking kings. They think they're better than everyone else because, they make us X amount of money a year. They act like they're fucking rich, and even though they're not, I have more contempt for them than I do for the rich. Even though the rich, the ultra rich in general, they're worse, arguably, but I don't ever have to deal with them. It's the middle class that I constantly have to deal with because the narrative in America that they're the working class, they're the people that we should be fucking supporting in these struggles. It's never the real working class, the poor, who are on a shoestring, constantly struggling to keep a roof over their head. It's never the disabled as well, who are part of this class as well, and the lumpen, who are doing everything they can just to survive or to stay off the streets. It's never them. It's never their struggles that's acknowledged. It's always the struggle. Oh my God, I can't get a new Xbox because my taxes is raising. Oh my God, I can't do this consumerist bullshit because I have to pay more, in taxes, or I have to pay, a higher mortgage on my house because of rent control. It's like, fuck off. Spare me the fucking crocodile tears. Give me the smallest violin, please, for, the middle class. They don't fucking have any sympathy for the disabled. I know this because I've experienced it firsthand every fucking, year that I've been working. It's the middle class that treat the working class like shit. They treat them the worst.
Yeah, no,
You want to know why Walmart workers are rude and don't really treat customers with respect? Why should they? Why? Why? When they're treated like shit by these fucking middle class fuckheads all the time, you know what? I don't blame them for acting the way they do. In fact, I don't think fucking employees owe these people anything. It's basic common decency. You treat people with respect, they'll treat you with respect. If you treat them with disrespect, they'll do it back.
Yeah.
But no. It's customer first. It's customer first. We have to treat these people like worship the ground they fucking walk on. Oh, don't get me started on the dehumanization that these people do when you don't know what an item is in the store and they fucking have to spell it. They spell it for you. It's like, is that really necessary? It's like they do everything to make, the poor and the disabled feel like worthless human trash. And this stream isn't about feeling sorry for the disabled or, pity. That's not what I advocate for. We need to support the disabled. We need to support the disabled struggle because if we're going to call ourselves communists, we should be supporting all struggles. And the disabled workers are in all stratas, of the lumpen and the oppressed, minorities of the country. Like, yes, yes, I may be white in quotations, I don't see myself as that, but everybody else does. I have it better than an indigenous disabled worker or a black disabled worker. I have it better than them. Not saying that because I feel superior. I'm saying this as objective material reality. If I were in the position that I was, when I was looking for a place and I were black, they wouldn't put nearly the amount of work that they did to find a new place for me. White people are always prioritized over anybody else. This is true. It doesn't matter where. White disabled workers are always treated better than disabled workers of color. This is a fact. Nobody's going to tell me otherwise, because if you look at what a disabled person who goes through, multiply that by 10 if you're black. Because not only would a black disabled worker have to suffer racism because, being black, they would suffer the stigma of being disabled, which is even worse. So I can't imagine how stressful it must be to be a disabled worker. But I can't speak for that struggle because I don't understand the African struggle as well as people that actually have experienced it. I can only talk about a struggle that I experienced firsthand. If there's any, disabled African comrades out there that want to talk about their experience, I think you should. Because there's a lot that I would like to learn. I'm all about, learning about other people's struggles and people hearing about the struggles that disabled people like myself go through. This is all about learning and teaching. As Marxists, we're supposed to be teachers. We're not supposed to be building a cult of personality or talking shit or doing this other crap like the Cringe Unhinged crew are doing or the Infrared cult are doing. We're supposed to be learning. It doesn't matter how old you are. We're teachers and we're students. That's what we should be using our knowledge for. Do you got anything to add to that, Stone?
What's it? I remember hearing about this from an African American comrade that the disabled struggle is probably one of the most ignored struggles in the world, and especially in the first world.
It is. Because the disabled aren't, in all honesty, the disabled, it's not worth, talking about this disabled struggle, even though it's connected to every other struggle. Disabled people have always existed.
Yeah, there's been a long-standing issue of the way in which we've dealt with them. Eugenics has been very anti-disabled.
But most people don't become become disabled because they're born disabled. Some of them become disabled because of physical conditions or a mental condition that they develop because of extreme, stress. But then again, this is a complicated topic. I mean, we're probably we're gonna be revisiting this probably more than we're gonna be revisiting this multiple times because this is a complex issue.
Indeed, it is.
So the way we're talking about it, we're just scratching the surface of the disabled struggle. We're just speaking from personal experience. There's people that could probably add more to it to the conversation, which I encourage any communists out there to do that. We should be talking about the disabled struggle because being disabled, is not, a thing that, I would wish on anyone.
Certainly, you don't want to be disabled and homeless. That's not the two things you want to be at the same time.
Because make no mistake, when fascism, when it fully takes over America, and it will, when it's open, fascist, when you have, Nazi talking points, or people like Tucker Carlson, their, you know, talking points, and the Proud Boys, theirs becoming mainstream, when they start actually openly talking about eugenics, you're going to see that the disabled be one, if not the first people to suffer, in a fascist takeover of America.
Yeah,
And
like
don't make a mis don't fucking think they won't target the disabled first. We're always the first, people that fascists always go after. We're always the scapegoats of any problems in a capitalist society. We're always, looked at as leeches, useless eaters, leeching off taxpayers. We will You're going to see propaganda being used against us if it isn't already.
it is already.
Like, look at how homeless people are treated in America. A homeless guy was shot, like, in fucking public, and people did nothing. They said nothing. You had a bunch of police officers shooting this guy, like a homeless guy, with a fucking, I don't even know what kind of gun it was. Like you gotta be serious. 3 police officers ganging up on a fucking homeless guy. And I can't imagine what how disabled people, what it's like to be in prison, because they're the ones that will be the first to die in a prison, or the first ones to have a breakdown. There is no ending to the hellishness of being a disabled person. Like,
Nah, not
look
much.
how look how like half the fucking country voted for a man that mocked a disabled worker. Like,
Yeah,
that's just disgusting. Half the fucking country voted for, Trump, a man that fucking mocked a disabled person, and you had fucking people laughing and cheering. It's like, what the fuck kind of fucked up shit is that?
the world we live in, fortunately.
It's like Americans have always had the mindset that, disabled people aren't human. I mean, why would you vote for Trump if you actually didn't think that way? Why the fuck, would you vote for Biden, who also, feels that way?
Well, they do see us as subhuman, which is at least something.
It's like Joe Biden has been talking about cutting social security, for years, despite knowing
Yes,
this, despite
decades.
having this public record. Fucking half the almost half the electorate that was able to that voted for fucking Biden voted for him anyway.
And coming into the seeing us as subhuman, that this is the guy who wrote and proudly touts about writing the crime act that put loads of African Americans in fucking behind bars for small amounts of marijuana and crack cocaine.
Yeah, I could see. Yeah, I actually could see your point about that, Louis. It did bring back Malthusian talking points. I mean, it's disgusting. It really is. It's like you have the Trump base, um, who voted for Trump despite knowing that he fucking mocked a disabled worker. You have the Biden base voting for Biden, who has contempt for the disabled too. It's like none of these people fucking care. It's like
Biden is technically disabled himself as well now.
he does have dementia, but I don't care about Biden. I really don't. I have no fucking compassion for Biden.
Neither do I, which is why I'm a little more creative when I jest about that stuff because people go a bit too fucking much attached to him being demented, and it's like, no, this is still same old Biden.
Yeah,
He may
Biden's
be he may be forgetting where he's left his slippers, but he's still a fascist. Like dementia doesn't make you just all of a sudden become like travel back in time, write the crime bill, fucking do loads of fascist stuff, nuke a country. But it also isn't going to turn him into nice granddad Joe. He's not just going to forget everything eventually and then become fucking what's it, Doctor Doolittle.
it's like none of these people actually generally care that you have, a fascist that hates the disabled in Trump. You have a fascist that hates the disabled in Biden. It's like most of the American, electorate just don't fucking care. And this isn't doomerism. If third worldism, the ideology I look use, am, you know, subscribe to, Maoism, third worldism, if seeing most of the American population, as irredeemable, that would gladly sacrifice the entire disabled population to keep their privilege, they fucking would do it. They
They did it
fucking
in the
would do it.
coronavirus.
They would fucking do it. The
They
fucking
were they
middle
were they
class.
were doing it in the coronavirus. They were allowing this is why they turned around and was like, oh, it only affects the disabled and the elderly, so that they could just pummel it for elderly people's homes and fucking for the disabled and basically try and keep people calm and at normal. Don't worry, it ain't gonna affect you. You're healthy. It only fucks up disabled. Well, I know people who are fucking healthy and they fucking had their entire life fucking slaps around their fucking ass. They're,
It's
they're,
like
they're alive, but they fucking, what's it? It fucked them up.
it's like I there's a good reason I don't vote, because to me it's meaningless when none of the politicians, that I see. In fact, I don't trust politicians at all. None of these fucking people, they don't care about the most vulnerable of society. And when you have a society that treats the most vulnerable with such contempt, it just says a lot about American society as a whole. It's, Americans hate the elderly. They hate the disabled. They hate fucking, the poor. They hate the homeless. It's like, what group do the middle class not fucking hate?
The what?
It's like there's not a single like group that they don't fucking hate.
Themselves.
It's just, wow. Yeah, and the disabled are, yeah, we're supposed to just shut up and be good little soldiers, and in the war, against fucking, this fascist state. Yeah, we're supposed to die. Yet the people that, who are against the fascist state, in quotations, would not change our conditions. In fact, they'd arguably make our conditions worse, considering the eugenic mindset, that people like Caleb Maupin and Roz have of the lumpen and, the disabled. Like, next, we're going to hear that talking about disabled struggles, that what we're talking about is anti-Marxist. That's what we're going to hear about from them, because they have no fucking argument against our points. And, well, he left. They have no arguments against my points. It's like, if you look at things objectively, look at what America is, not what you want it to be, but what America is. America is a Malthusian society, the most Malthusian society. You know, well, the British probably give America a run for its money, but America is one of the most Malthusian countries in the world.
Yeah, there's no surprise there. guys can't help yourselves.
No, we cannot.
America is the biggest sausage party in the world, is the way I put it.
It's just I've yet to hear any of these so-called Marxists. I've yet to hear them offer a solution. Okay, how do you help disabled people? How do you know get us out of these bad positions? What's your solution to help the most vulnerable in society? Because in my opinion, if you're advocating to build a better society, that is worthless if you're not willing to actually take the most vulnerable in society into consideration.
Well,
Because
these are people that want to progenize, like they want to spout and they want to push this fascist culture of America forward. So these people are the deniers of slavery and all this shit like that. They don't care for the disabled as much as they don't care for African Americans.
yeah, I just see it as the same thing. You know, the most vulnerable parts of society are treated with contempt. Our struggles don't matter. And if we talk about this struggle, it's liberalism, it's virtual signaling.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's like none of these people would last a year if they were forced to live, like I do.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see them try and fucking deal with life and the Lampen. It would
Oh
not be
my
something
god,
that they would very much get on very well with.
oh my god, I can't be buy all these consumer goods. Oh my god, I I can't. This is horrible. This is horrible. This is horrible. Oh my god. Uh, it's like, yeah, it's like their entire they just want to push American consumerism. That's what it is. It's like there's no fucking nothing to address American consumption and how America consumes more than it fucking needs, wastes most of the fucking food that it has. Like America is like killing the planet. It's like if every single country lived like America, the human race would become extinct you know, within a decade, maybe two, to be generous. There is not enough, resources for the American lifestyle. Even North America by itself, is too much for the planet.
So, in short, America is too fat for the world to continue to exist.
Yeah,
America, fuck yeah. America eats too much donuts for the world's resources to handle,
of course, of course,
and
and
crack for too much oil.
there's a lot of disabled people that have weight problems too, which is another which goes into another thing about fat phobia.
Hey,
Like
nice little segue.
it's like yeah, is and I don't because a lot of people that are overweight, there's reasons a lot of people are genetics, their metabolism, not being shit, depression. A lot of people that are overweight suffer depression or extreme stress.
No, no, no.
Of course, there's people that who all are also underweight as a result of these things as well. But those who don't have a great metabolism, their weight has a lot to do with their genetics and the stress that they go through.
Yeah.
Because my weight problems that I have, I'm not going to say it isn't my fault, but a lot of it is depression and stress. Like where I live, like I wasn't overweight when I first lived in out on my own. Actually, I didn't start getting that way until I started living on my own. when I had more disposable income, because I what the place that I lived at, it was so stressful. I needed to be away from the house. So getting away from the house is started this habit that's been hard to break. I don't go out as much as I used to, but the stress that I dealt with, when I first moved into, my first apartment on my own, contributed to the weight that I have now. Are you still there,
Yeah,
Stone?
yeah.
And
It's
the
one of
fat,
them.
like the fat phobia thrown at Jason is, I think, it's disgusting. It's like, wow, you can't tackle his point of third worldism, so you attack his weight. What
Well,
else?
what else are they supposed to do? Come up with a proper argument? Lol.
It's like some of these people that criticize Jason, I wouldn't be surprised if they're not that better and that good shape themselves. Like, it's so easy to criticize people like, poor working class people who, but who it's difficult for them to lose weight because A, they're busy working. B, you know, they don't have the money or resources to afford the foods that would make it easier for them to lose weight. And just in general, losing weight loss is something that's very fucking hard. It isn't easy.
Sure, you can't just think hard enough and then it just happens.
Just continue this for a bit. I have to take something.
Alright. Well, what's it? There's very little consideration taken into the side of people who are suffering with weight issues. It's not like it's something you can just click your finger and then that's it. It's just all going to change. And when you're in the lower class, a lot of the cheapest of things, the fattiest of things. Fucking hell. What's it?
Exactly. I actually view, you know, you know, making fun of people for their weight is also punching down at people who just don't who a lot of these people live in food deserts.
Yeah, indeed. Ooh. Ah, back. Oh. No,
You
I
all
mean,
right?
little. Yeah, I'm fine. I mean, little consideration is taken into the sort of day-to-day life that's taken up by most people who are disabled. You get a lot of people who are considerate, and that's it. You know, all respect to those that fucking do take that consideration into hand. But there are so many out there who just don't go fucking fiddle in their stick.
I've had idiots like Noah say I'm not working class, which is concept of it is ridiculous. So disabled people are not considered working class, which is funny. Like,
Well, I mean, then
disabled people are some of the hardest workers you'll ever see on a job.
with 1 second you're not lump, and 1 second you're not proletarian, or what the fuck?
Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, okay, I'm not working class, I'm not lumping. I'm what am I then?
A new discovery. The cripple class. Welcome to cripple class.
Yeah. It's like, and like again, like I said in the string, this isn't an attempt to like make you feel sorry for me or to, you know, like or anything like that. It's just to bring up the issues of being disabled, and that's the problem. when the topic of disability ever gets brought up, people, the things are always thrown at you. You're just trying to get people to feel sorry for you, and that's bullshit. And it's really frustrating because these issues, they're rarely addressed at all, and it's as if these struggles do not exist. Unfortunately, this stream, won't get the attention that it deserves because people are not interested in hearing about disabled problems, and they should be interested in hearing about disabled problems because, you could be disabled, your loved ones could be disabled, like anyone could get to my point. If you're poor, yeah, this could be you. Like being mentally disabled, sucks, but being physically and mentally disabled is even worse.
Yeah,
Like
no, yeah, no, yeah.
an argument can be made that veterans are mostly are disabled. You can make an argument for that, but they're not considered disabled by society. In fact, veterans are treated as bad as everybody else. Yeah, America loves their veterans so much that that they treat them like garbage, like they don't matter. Now, I'm not going to speak for veterans, but I'm just bringing up veterans as a prime example because a lot of the people that are homeless are veterans.
Indeed, they are.
It's like, yeah, these people, they had their physical body destroyed, their mental, state destroyed, and all they get in return is fuck off. You've outlived your usefulness. No, go off. In addition, die. That's the mindset that the American, people have towards, the disabled, veterans especially. It's like I've heard the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard today by a so-called Marxist that I'm like chauvinistic against the American people. It's like, what the fuck does that even mean? Chauvinistic? Chauvinistic? Against what? The most privileged class in the country, the most privileged class in the entire world. Like, I swear to God, American Marxists, like who pushed this patriotic socialist bullshit, they will do anything to rehabilitate America and make America out to be the victim of every signal situation, every signal thing that America has done, every signal, you know, people's lives they've ruined. It's always a way to deflect, and make America out to be anything but the aggressor in these situations. There is no chauvinism against America because what is America? What is America? America is essentially a culture of multiple freaking European cultures that's been assimilated, multiple cultures from Asia that's been assimilated. All America is assimilated people. There is no fucking American culture. There is no American fucking people. It's all a bunch of bullshit to cling on to something that never fucking existed in the first place.
Ah, sorry, I
It's
get
like
one wrong.
it's like when I fucking hear, some dumbass Americans say, you're chauvinist against American people. I want to fucking laugh because there is no American people.
Yeah, there's the European settlers, there's the African Americans that they dragged over here from Africa, and then there's the well, I'd say the natives that they stole the land from.
It's just America is a country of assimilation. That's all it is. There's nothing unique about this country. It's like it's just a
Genocide.
melting pot of every culture that has existed. In America, it does nothing but steal from other cultures and acts like it created it. Like it's really disgusting how this American patriotism was stolen from fucking the indigenous. It's like fucking God, these white supremacists cannot fucking let freaking oppressed people have one thing of their own. It's always fucking they always have to appropriate something from somebody else because that's the American fucking way.
I mean, whenever you hear about burgers, everyone thinks about Burger King, when actually, what's it? Burgers are a German food. The more you know.
Of
It is
course,
European.
of course, like America hasn't created one thing unique. Like hell, fucking its ideas for empire building was not even its own. It's taken from fucking Europe.
I mean, whilst we already made crisps long before, without any influence on those actually existing, there was one unique piece of food that was made. That was potato chips, but that was an African American that invented that, so it doesn't count for the white Americans. It'd be them cheating. It's like soul food. So yes, soul food is one of them, but that's once again African American and Jamaican food. So it's like yeah, it's still not them again.
The great music that was created in the 20th century were not created by white Americans. It was created by the new African people.
Oh my blues, blues is the way
It
the rhythm goes.
it's like all the great music that in the 20th century were all started by freaking the new African people. It wasn't white Americans that created this stuff.
Well, there was that music as well that inspired bands like Black Sabbath as well. Black Sabbath started off as a heavy blues band, so
Yeah, it's like none of this stuff would have existed if it weren't for the new African people. It's like the new African people have contributed to a lot of things that the fucking white, population claimed to love. Yet, all your favorite music would not have existed if it weren't for the new African people to have started this in the first place. Jazz, blues, rock and roll, metal, none of this stuff would exist without the new African people.
Punkwood.
So if anything, the America has everything that is American. It's just appropriated from other fucking cultures. America has never created anything unique of its own. It's always appropriated something from other cultures. And maybe what little thing it might have created, I'm just being generous. It fucking ruined it, or it's a worser version of something that was created
One of
before.
my favorite one is America went from like World War I and World War II, where they were designing great weapons, and you had like the late 1800s who were great weapons designers, to like post World War II. I wish Nev was here because he'd really be able to put it out there. My mate Nev, we could go into discussions on you for hours about this, but basically, the end of World War II, America just went from like having really great design platforms and ideas coming up and squashing things out and building all this, that, and the other, to just make things shit. And it was like fucking night and day. America went from being really, really good at designing their shit to absolute fucking dog shite. And eventually you get to the point where you get things like the M3 Bradley, which is just, my goodness, terribly. It is terribly.
Well, I know that. Okay, this is not. I want to get back to the original topic of the stream, but I actually think we've covered all that we could because if this continues longer, it will change the subject into something else. And the whole point of this stream is not to have it be like 3 or 4 hours, like these things that the Moppin and Infrared cult do. They do streams they make them long just for the sake of being long.
I mean, one thing I will say, because I saw them mention the DPRK in the chat. The DPRK has a very good is a very good fucking what's it system into the way that they deal with the disabled. I mean, what's it? They try and elevate them and give them a good education. And one of their most famous poets is someone with cerebral palsy. Just a lovely little story. I always like that.
It's just the disabled are never in a capitalist society, unless you're born middle class or rich, they're never given the chance to actually, you know, reach their potential, to actually learn, to actually, pursue what they want to do. Like what they do to disabled people as children just creates lifelong disabilities. Like,
Caleb hates rock and roll. That's pretty cringe.
well, of course. It's like, would so many disabled people have as many mental problems or a low self-esteem if we had a society that actually prioritized learning instead of profit? It's like, in order to get a good education, if you're disabled, you have to have a private tutor, you have to go to a private school, and guess what? Most people who are disabled, they're not going to be fucking, be able to afford that. You're only going to be able to afford that if you're middle class or upper middle class or rich. You get what I'm saying. You're never going to get afford that if you're poor. Like countries, where,
Have you
you know,
considered cleaning your room?
like
Might
countries
might
where
help.
education is prioritized over fucking profits, countries that actually
Don't do
have education available for free, that prioritize learning, you don't see disabled people in those countries have nearly as many problems as they do in America. And I'm speaking from the American experience because that's all I know, because that's all I've experienced.
I just love the Jordan Peterson mentality that people tend to have towards the disabled within their struggle and all this, is that they tend to relate it, they try and tie it to things that aren't related to the situation, or tie it to things that are symptoms of the problem, not the core issue of the situation, and try and do like circular logic around the problem.
The whole thing that they do with the disabled in general is they blame the disabled for their problems, even though, how is it our fault that we did not learn, you know in the same rate as everybody else?
Did you not remember picking to be disabled on the character creation screen when you were born?
It's like, and if we're offered the same opportunities, the same, you know if we're put on equal footing, you know what would happen? The disabled, the learning disabled would surpass the supposedly normal students. The the learning disabled are always fucking a lot smarter than the fucking people that aren't that way. I mean, look at Albert Einstein. He had autism. One of the greatest minds, of the 20th century. Smarter than,
Autism isn't a learning disability, though.
well, it could become one.
No,
It can become one.
no.
It,
Autism is only a disability because of society. Autism itself isn't a disability at all.
I understand that, but I, but a lot of people with learning disabilities do have autism.
Yeah, they do, but that's
It's okay.
no. America calls autism a learning disability. Autism is a neurodivergency. It is where the neurology is structured in a different state.
Okay, I understand what you're getting at, but I'm saying that America has made something like autism. They make it a disability because we're neglected, and we are purposely, like, left, to have our brains fucking rot and
You're
never
disabled
actually.
by society, which means Albert Einstein, someone who is of the aristocracy, wouldn't be struggling.
Doesn't change the fact that, that he was one of the greatest minds of the 20th century,
Of course,
despite having
it gives it
autism.
gives it project. Well, it wouldn't be despite it. autism doesn't limit. If anything, autism helps to expand that type of level of scientific activity, analytical experiments. There was a study that my mate was telling me about where they say that like what's it 80% of people that are in scientific and political positions are the Asperger's type. So
Yeah, but if you put them on equal footing, you give them the same amount of resources, you give them the same amount of opportunities as those who don't have that, guess what? They're going to be a lot smarter and get better grades.
yeah,
But
autistic people would, but
a
they'll do
lot
the
of
same
that
for everyone else.
that doesn't happen in reality because in America especially, if you don't learn the same way as everyone else, they abandon you quickly and they make you feel worthless and like you are at fault for why this has happened. And by the time you become a teenager, surprise, 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 you have behavior problems. You're angry. You are depressed. You feel worthless. You feel angry, and you don't know why you're angry, and you feel like everything is your fault. And then by the time you're an adult, a few different things will happen. You probably get addicted to drugs, or because you you don't know how to deal with it, or you do what I do. Actually, instead of giving up and actually giving in, you actually channel your anger and actually use your anger as a motivator to prove the people wrong that talk down to you. But a lot of people do not have my mindset, unfortunately.
Taking
Be-
drugs isn't giving in. I disagree with that logic.
what?
Your logic is flawed.
I don't thought I'm using it as an example. I'm just saying that based on what I've seen, what I've experienced firsthand, that a lot of people just give up, because of the way society is treats the disabled.
It's a perspective of giving up, but surviving is not giving up. So long as life is still pumping through someone's veins, they've not just given up. I mean, I was addicted to all sorts of different fucking, I was on ecstasy and all that when I was on the streets. And I wasn't giving up, I was still pushing through. I
I don't
decided to
mean it.
get
I don't
myself the
mean
support that I decided to get. But no, but that's what people are going through. They're going through that struggle. A
that's
struggle.
not what I
So
mean
as
by
long as
giving
struggle
up.
exists, you've not given up.
That's not what I mean by
Giving
giving
up,
up.
giving up is death. That's giving up. That's when you're done. When you die. There's no space for sitting around in the streets.
Well, there's what is being dead. What is being dead? You mean physical death, or being dead inside, or being mentally dead? Because I've seen,
Oh, what's it? Even though dead inside long before you're fucking dead.
because I've seen a person where I live with an autistic person who just didn't stop caring, actually,
Yeah,
because he
I've
because
stopped caring to a degree.
because people just don't care. And my motivation, like throughout my entire life, is proving people wrong. When they say I can't do this, I prove them wrong. Like I had some assholes say I wouldn't build, I would never get a high school diploma. I proved them wrong. I had some assholes say, "Oh, I can't handle my finances because I did this and this when I was living with my sister." I proved it. I proved that asshole wrong by, not Sorry, by spending my money only on things that I needed, my job was the only thing I had at the time to pay my rent. My
Yeah,
motivation was proving people wrong, but it also depends on the environment. A lot of autistic people in America just do not have the support that I did emotionally, or have that motivation. We are all products of our environment. We all are. We can't change that. We can't any more than we could you know you know stop the sun from rising and falling. We can't stop that. We we are dealt with the cards that have been given to us.
I've not been dealt with any fucking good cards. Except for the way my old man put me up and I fucking got through this shit.
But I think an important thing though about supporting the disabled struggle is empathy. You have to have empathy. Empathy is how you could start actually supporting struggle in the first place. Like if you're willing to support the disabled struggle, you're going to support the other struggles as well because it's all connected. Because the most vulnerable of society are always going to be the first on the chopping block when there is a fascist takeover of any country or a fascist movement that will be the first on the chopping block. The disabled are lazy. The disabled aren't working hard enough. These people, you know, we should maybe they're not as disabled as we think. They'll just change the definition of what it means to be disabled.
Yeah, that's not out of their rule book. They like to fuck around with the fucking narrative of all sorts. They like to change the meaning of what it means to be um, sick and what it means to be crippled and what it means to be mentally disabled and what it means to be learning disabled, what it means to be cognitively disabled, what it means to have an emotional or mental impasse disorder or disability or illness that causes mental health problems, etc., psychological issues. They'll change the narrative on a lot of things, but I mean, a lot of the things that we're going to see now is it's the coronavirus has already had its strike on these communities. I think the next thing you're going to be seeing is the African American, the native, and the immigrant working classes which brings it into first world in general. But I'm just speaking along an American lines for now because I think that it's the easiest demographic to talk about. I think we're going to be seeing the return of industry being pulled back now that China has become big power and everyone's going to be getting big scared, so they're going to be bringing back their industry and they'll probably end up forcing a lot of the unemployed lumpen proletariat into these factories for low wages.
Yeah, the lumpen proletariat, and and those who are living on a shoestring, they're going to be they're going to be the target. Yeah, they're going to be the first people that they're going
Yeah,
to
because they'll
target.
likely do it minimum wage because the fucking what's it factory owners being pissed that they're going to be losing money, but they what's it, so they're going to be want to make as much back as possible.
Yeah, it's like they're going to like get it basically, you know, they're going to get they're just going to basically say make people desperate who are looking for work. That's going to be their only alternative, for employment. There will be no other alternative. There will be no other viable alternative. That's how they're going to get people to, work, you know, in these kind of jobs that are not desirable because they're gonna make it so it'll be the only viable option. Like you're gonna see probably entire disabled communities, like be shipped into these kind of places. It's going to happen. The disabled are always going to be the first people on the chopping block, and when the factories come back, they're going to be the first ones shipped to these places. It's just one way of killing off undesirables.
To be honest, I disagree. They're not going to do that first. If anything, they'll be sticking the African Americans in there first. Like I said, they've already had their strike against the disabled communities with the coronavirus. They targeted at them. There'll be the African American community or the African Anglo community in this regard here, and it would be the lower class immigrant and just other, lower class wage workers, just the lumpen proletariat, the unemployed working class, those who are desperate for work. That's what they're going to do because it's like, oh, we need to bring these things back, or we need to get things to go working in there. So we're going to make sure that we're like, okay, well, we'll go for the ones who are the most desperate for work and ram them in there. There will be a lot of disabled people there because a lot of disabled people aren't getting the support they need or the sick pay that they need to get the support otherwise and are working in jobs, fucking what's it? Even though I'm not getting the PIP, I'm still lucky compared to a mass amount of people. because I'm still able to get my sick pay.
I don't know what state they're going to do it in. Bring these factories back. I could see parts of California, having these places because because a lot of the disabled community is in California, and what better place to get lumpen workers in these places than California because there's a lot of unemployed in this state. I think I think they're also going to probably put some in the Southwest too, which also has a huge lumpen community. The
Hmm.
the lumpen are far bigger than people want to actually admit that they are. They're a lot bigger. It isn't a small percentage of the population. There's a lot of that stuff that's underreported. They're not as big as the middle class, but they're still a significant number of the population.
What's the most revolutionary part of the population?
There are enough of the lumpen population where the ruling class would see them as a potential threat, and they would use the factory jobs as a way to deal with it.
Yes, exactly.
The poor working class would also probably be seen as a threat too, but not as much because the thing is they're never going to completely do away with the homeless, never completely do away with the lumpen because they're needed. They are needed to constantly remind people this is you if you don't get in line. They're used as tools of fear. And that's the reason why there's a lot of anti lumpen sentiment from, these groups, that we're talking about because they don't want to fucking have those people in sight, but they do see them as useful tools to basically fearmonger about the poorest of the population possibly rising up against them. Why do you think they're so anti, revolution? Why is it that the poorest of the population are always for revolution and it's never the middle class? It's because the poor know that there's nothing better but revolution for their lives. You can't go better than revolution. For the middle class, their lives would get worse because they'd have to be on the same footing as the people that they constantly look down on. The
Yes.
Yeah, the poor and the disabled. Yeah,
And then the aristocracies likes the beneficiary life that they have and their lifestyle, their existence, their class culture. It's all tied to the military industrial complex.
yeah, you cannot separate these things. For Yeah, there's an anti-disabled sentiment from both the so-called leftists and the right.
Look what the labor aristocracy did to the Soviet Union. They turned that thing into a military industrial complex by the end of it. Like, fucking, must be this mass arms producer. Must arms race with the US. Must arm race with the US when it didn't need to. By the 60s, it was fucking more than well armed enough that the US couldn't do shit.
Well, that's a discussion for a different time.
It's just a
Anyway,
nice little pointer on the aristocracy.
final thoughts.
What's it, I mean, as it comes with a lot of struggles, this is the same thing as for racism as it is for dealing with this. But when it comes to the disabled, you should not presume. You should instigate, learn, be a learner, not a I think I know Wagwan kind of person. You don't know Wagwan. You need to ask. You need to understand and listen. And anyone polite enough is going to be able to learn from someone Wagwan with these type of struggles and how they could better frame themselves around it.
Well, for the disabled, my advice for people who want to learn from us, just listen to what we have to say. Don't don't interject, don't speak for us. Don't act like you know better than us. Just listen. we have a lot we can teach you. Now, my story and Stone's are not going to be the same as somebody else. Each, lumpen disabled worker has a different story, has a different thing that they can talk about, different life experiences. There's a lot of disabled workers that have had it far worse than I ever will.
Just disabled people in general.
It's just don't just listen to me because you're a fan of me or you like what I have to say. There's other people you should listen to too. I'm not the only disabled person. We should all listen to disabled people. We're all teachers in one way or another, and we need to, you know, teach and be willing to be taught by other people. This is Darth Sinovia. Long live the People's Revolution. Down with America. Down with Israel. Long live the RRA. Long live Hamas. And fuck American patriotism.
Only PSFN, the true holders of patriotism within the regions of America, native terminology co-opted by the Caleb Marpinites.
Yeah, down with the Moppin culture. Down with the Moppinites. Down with infrared. Long live the revolution.